the core order of ritual for ADF. There's approximately 14 steps. They are initiating the rite, purification, honoring the Earth Mother, statement of purpose, recreating the cosmos, opening the gates, inviting the kindred, key offerings, prayer of sacrifice, the omen, calling to the blessings, hallowing the blessings, affirming the blessings. If there's any workings, they then go next. After the working section, you thank the beings, close the gates, thank the Earth Mother, and close out the rite. So, for initiating the rite, the very first step, you need to think that we need to make sure that our brains are beginning the rite. So it needs to be a very clear-cut beginning that allows you to leave the mundane time and space. It defines the exact moment that the rite begins, and this can be done extremely well with musical signals, opening prayers, a processional, or a meditation of sorts. So musical signals can be knells with a hammer, especially in a Norse rite. Some people use a bell, and other people use a large drum. An opening prayer will address the participants and the kindred to allow the kindred to have that first view of what's upcoming. The processional is an organized method of moving into the ritual space. This is especially useful for groups because you can circumvent the ritual space and it marks out the actual space that you're going to be in.
Yeah.
For a meditation of sorts, it establishes your group mind, and for a solitaire, this can also be extremely useful because it will quiet your mind and get you ready for ritual. By the end of the establishing the group mind, everyone should be calm and focused on the ritual. Do either of you have any questions on initiating the rite?
No.
Alrighty. So the next step, is purification. This is done by removing, adding, or marking things. It readies the space, tools, and participants for the ritual, and it removes or suspends undesirable things. The general neo-pagan example of this is negativities or counterproductive energies. So the ancients thought of this as ritual impurity. So this would come from grave dislocations of normal life, such as being too close to birth or death. So those people who would deal with death on a regular basis would be those ones that would need to be purified in order to be closer to the folk. ADF as a whole tends towards the more neo-pagan interpretation, where it's, readying your mind for ritual, removing the negativity and counterproductive energies that we may have in our daily lives that we should not be bringing into ritual. So this purification step can also add desirables. So fumigation, such as incense, adds while it purifies. Instead of removing things, it adds in the scent of the incense and allows for that mindset to change. It also marks things as special. So a universal Indo-European practice was to draw a circle around something that you wanted to purify. The Hellenics carry a water jug and a basket around the altar and participants. The Slavics did the circle thing with a shovel and a broom. And the Irish did a beating of the bounds of their territory. So noises and whatnot would be taken to the different places on their territory to mark it as theirs. There is some controversy with the purification step. This comes into play when you're dealing with working in a natural surrounding. Some people say there's no need because nature is already more pure than anything else. And some say the purification removes negative energies of the other users of the site, especially if this is not a site that you own, so a public park, etc. This step also can claim the space for use in this case. ADF specifically has no hard and fast rules about what must be purified. It's a use your own judgment and use your own intuition on this.
Okay.
So are there any questions about the purification aspect?
Not so far.
Pardon, Lane?
Oh, I said not so far.
Okay.
I usually just use incense and walk around the perimeter.
The other thing you can also do with the incense is actually a sprinkling of water. So if there's a ADF chant, I don't remember who it was written by. It might have been Ian Corrigan.
He seems to have written a lot of them.
Right. Yeah.
It's by the light of the fire and the might of the water, this whatever is made whole and holy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you can use this space, this person, this, blade, etc. And it will mark it as whole and holy. What typically happens with the water, it's either carried around or sprinkled, etc., for both energies to have imbued it.
Right.
So
sorry.
It's okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say another good reason for the incense is it's been my experience that right in your the oldest part of your brain is where your scent receptacles are, and consequently if you use the same incense to start the ritual every time, it will trigger people to go into the proper frame of mind.
And that's actually why I use the same incense every time. Most of my deities actually will get this incense as offerings. I use it as purification, the whole 9 yards, because it's the same scent that will trigger me.
I know it's not legitimately Indo-European in origin, but I really tend to use white sage because I'm used to it. It smells good, and it serves both the function of removing and adding, in my opinion.
Yes,
So,
and the one thing you do have to watch when you're dealing in a group practice with purification and using incense is allergies.
right.
Some people are allergic to sandalwood, some people are allergic to sweetgrass, some people are allergic to orange. You have to be very careful with what you're using if you're doing a group practice. Our next section of the core order is honoring the Earth Mother. There are a few different ways of looking at the topic of the Earth Mother. She can be the planet as a whole, the spirit of the planet, the concept of Gaia, and her specific deities such as Hertha, Gaia, the moist Mother Earth, etc.
Right.
Some people also will use Danu if they're Irish Celtic.
Right.
But this is the Irish lore emphasized the local goddesses of the land, so the sovereignty goddesses. The Earth Mother is honored early in the rite to emphasize the nature baseline of our religion, and because of the fact that the Earth Mother is always around, the gates do not need to be opened first because we're already in intimate contact with her. In addition to the Earth Mother, some groups and some people also recognize a Sky Father in this section. This honors the common Indo-European Sky Father type, such as Tyr, Zeus, Jupiter, and they all share the Proto-Indo-European Sky Father name. It's often associated...
Shelley?
Yes?
You're going to want to mute me for a second.
Pardon?
You're going to want to mute me for a second. My dogs are going to go nuts.
Give me a second.
Okay.
Done. All right. So as I was saying, the Sky Father is often associated with order and rulership. So this section would go with the Earth Mother, as we're also in intimate contact with the Sky Father at the same time. So our next section after the Earth Mother is the Statement of Purpose. This formally marks the intent of the ritual, makes the formal intent of the ritual known, sorry. It declares to the participants and to the kindred, and it answers the question why we are actually there at the ritual. The Statement of Purpose covers the nature of the rite, the purpose, and the precedent for the rite. So the history as well as what we're going to be doing. The temptation is to put this particular section with the opening prayer. The core order of ritual tutorial that's actually on the ADF website that you can click to from the core order states you can probably move it without much problem, but it's also good to have it after we've done a few things. The other temptation is to remove the statement of purpose when dealing with a smaller group. The problem with this is if you are doing a public ritual and you have a newcomer or unexpected guest, such as someone's significant other. The lack of a statement of purpose can throw these new people for a loop. And if doing a group ritual, it's best to leave it in somewhere. Whether it's in the opening prayer or after the Earth Mother / Sky Father section, because that will at least allow the participants as well as the kindred to know what's coming up. Is there anything that you can think of that would go in the statement of purpose?
Thinking. No, just basically an explanation. And well, no, the explanation and outline of ritual practice I generally put before the ritual itself, as you know, for people who aren't used to ADF stuff. So really, explaining why we're here and what we're intending to do seems to be most of it to me. I can't think of anything else offhand.
Yeah, and that's the general purpose of the statement of purpose. When dealing with a group ritual, you can also do kind of like a frequently asked question at the beginning, which is called the ritual briefing, and that gives the general outline for people who are new. Although it's not a specific part of the core order, it does give that pre-explanation to new people at the beginning of the ritual. Trying to unmute Linda. Give me a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get you unmuted, Linda. I'm not sure why it's not letting me. Linda, can you unmute yourself? No, okay. Give me one moment, everyone, so that I can sort of...
Yay!
Oh, there we go.
I just had to get to the right place.
Oh, okay. So, Linda, do you have any questions about the Earth Mother or Statement of Purpose sections of the ritual?
No, not at all.
Okay. Is there anything you would like to add?
There is a chant, again, I don't remember who wrote it, but we are one with the Mother, we are one with each other. I like to do that right after honoring the Earth Mother, because it just kind of pulls it all together.
Yeah, many people will use like a chant after their initial invocation of the Earth Mother to allow for more musical signals throughout the ritual. It depends on your comfort level with chants or poetry, etc., whether or not people use this.
I'd like to add with honoring the Earth Mother, there are multiple deities that I've identified as kind of filling that role in the Norse pantheons. So I just kind of do a general honoring of Earth Mothers because it seems to be not a singular thing necessarily. You know, we've had a lot of splitting hairs over whether Yorth is appropriate or Nerthus and a couple of others. So I include them all and mention a few of their names when I start my rites.
Yeah, and that's the thing when it comes to using local sovereignty goddesses is there can be some splitting of hairs over who should be honored.
Right.
The general Earth Mother concept covers all of them. And in a group ritual, this also will cover the different perceptions of Earth Mother between the different participants, whether or not you've got participants who are Norse, Celtic, Hellenic, etc. This will allow for all those deities to be honored.
Mm-hmm.
So our next step is recreating the cosmos. This starts the power raising for the ritual. It's to find our place in the cosmos, also known as the universe as we know it, and find our sacred center.
Mm-hmm.
This is the point where all other points are accessible from, or the center axis of all the worlds. The cosmos have different structures in different hearths. They do typically form triads. There's the concept of Lancian sky. There's the concept of the three realms of heaven, the middle world, and the underworld, also known as the vertical axis, versus a horizontal one, such as the three worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And Smith has the 9 worlds, but does follow a triplicate of 3s.
Okay.
So within this Recreating the Cosmos section, there's also the Sacred Center. So typically in ADF, this is known as Fire, Well, and Tree.
Mm-hmm.
However, different hearth cultures can also have certain things that are different, such as the Greeks have the omphalos at the center.
Shelley, you're echoing a lot.
Yeah, it's Linda.
Oh, okay.
It's Linda going away.
So the Greeks have the omphalos, like the world navel at the center instead of a tree.
Mm-hmm.
Yggdrasil connects all the 9 worlds in the Norse tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what you use for your the triplicate of the Sacred Center, pretty much there must be fire. Although it's commonly represented as fire, well, and tree, these are known as the 3 gates in most people's traditions.
Okay.
They open the portal to the worlds, and the only portion, as I said, that cannot be adjusted is the fire. However, you can have omphaloses, pillars, mountains, etc. instead of the tree.
Mm-hmm.
So this section is called Recreating the Cosmos, although the re is in brackets, because every ritual weaves and reweaves the web of the cosmos.
Mm-hmm.
The sacrifices at this section of the ritual align with the sacrifices of creation, such as the slain body in the Norse tradition to create the world. The Vedics have the body of Purusha, Romans the slaying of Remus by Romulus. And there is actually an article by, I believe it's Kirk Thomas, that is called The Nature of Sacrifice. This gives a lot more depth to this section and can be found on the ADF website. I will put it in the comments below when I'm done with the topic. So after recreating the cosmos, we of course have opening the gates. Since we have the Sacred Center recreated, we can now use them to open the gates. So standing at the center opens a clear channel to the kindreds. Now, the kindreds can hear us without the gates. The gates just make it a little easier for them to hear us. Think of having a conversation through a closed door. It's much easier if you open the door, though you can hear the person on the other side.
Right.
So the gates also enable an easier transfer of energy to the spirits and from the spirits for the return flow later on.
Mm-hmm.
This opening and closing of the gates is done with the assistance of a gatekeeper. They aid us in working with the gates and are adjusted depending on the hearth culture of the ritual. They can also be a nature spirit or an ancestor. Certain groups work with Garanus, also known as the crane, and they've had success with that over the years. Some people will also work with an ancestor, such as Don, the first ancestor of the Irish Celtic, and work with him to open the gates.
Mm-hmm.
A tradition favorite for most Celtic rites is Manannán as the Mist Wanderer. But as long as the deity is a psychoprompt type deity or a messenger, and any guides and keepers of boundaries are also good options for gatekeepers. So if you have a personal nature spirit or ancestor that is willing to work with you to open those gates, you can work with them no problem. You can welcome whichever deity or spirit that is opening the gates and open the gates themselves in one step. However, some people will welcome them first and then ask them to help with opening the gates. In most literature, there are parentheses around the S on gates, and that is because some people view the gates as one gate in the center of the sacred center, and some see it as the fire opening as a gate, the well opening as a gate, and the tree as a bridge, which will end up being 3 portals versus 1. So are there any questions about the gatekeeper or the step of opening the gates?
None so far.
Linda, how about you?
Nope, I'm good.
Alrighty. So our next step, after the gates are open and the kindred, we're not yelling through the door to the kindred, is to invite them to our space. As I've covered in the past, these are the nature spirits, ancestors, and shining ones, also known as the gods and goddesses. And do either of you need a quick refresher on those, or can I continue on?
No, I'm good.
No, I think we're good.
Okay. So the 3 kindred are also regularly called the noble, mighty, and shining ones, respectively, as there's a couple different names for each of them. These are invited via the gates to be present at the ritual. The 4 reasons to invite them are to honor them, have them assist us with honoring the deities of the occasion, and this is due to the fact that with the kindreds supporting us, we can send more powerful energy to the deity of the occasion, have them help us later on. Any workings done in the working section will also be supported by the kindred, and therefore more power raised. For example, during a ritual with a fertility deity of the occasion, rain magic can still be performed because there's going to be storm deities that have been invited via the Shining Ones. Inviting all the kindreds also enacts the ghosty principle, which establishes a relationship with vast multitudes of beings without having to call them each individually. This also allows, if you continually work with the kindred, you'll always have allies to call on in times of need, such as, healing that needs to be done, an ancestor that needs to cross over, help getting a job, etc. So with the kindred relationships, it will allow those relationships to continue. So, are there any questions on inviting the kindred section of the core order?
No.
Linda?
Nope.
Alrighty. So, our next section is the key offerings. This is the main section of the ritual. Everything leads up to this point, and it's one of the higher points of energy in the ritual. This is the section where you present offerings to the specific beings, such as the deities of the occasion. Many people in writing will shorten this to a capital D, small o, small t, capital O. Although this section is labeled as deities of the occasion, it can be also spirits of the occasion, and have the ancestors or nature spirits as the focus of your ritual. This can also be called the patrons of the occasion, so that you're including the other 2 kindred depending on how you're working your ritual. The spirits of the occasion are the presiding powers over the rite. They're your guests of honor. So they're the ones that you're going to have the elaborate offerings for and the seat of honor at the table. They receive our praise offerings, our art, our material offerings, and the like. They bless our celebrations, they witness oaths, they guide intentions, they power workings, and so on. They, like the kindred, because they're essentially part of them, arrive via the gates as well. Invocations for the spirits of the occasion may be like those for the kindred, but more elaborate and more specific. This step can merge with the inviting of the kindred if you're not inviting a specific deity of the occasion, and you're just honoring the 3 kindreds themselves. This section can also include seasonal customs, such as lighting Yule logs or passing between fires at Beltane, etc. So this is one of those sections that it's the main big area right in the center of the ritual.
Right.
Now, are there any questions about the key offerings and how this section of the ritual happens?
Nope.
No.
Alrighty. So the next section is our prayer of sacrifice. Isaac Bonewitz called this the moment of supreme tension within the ritual. It's the exclamation point on the whole offering section, the culmination, the climax, the grand finale of all the offerings. This can be done with additional offerings to top things off, such as prayers, poetry, additional physical offerings, and the initial energy sending is complete at this point. This is when we've sent off everything that we can to receive the blessings from the kindred and the deities of the occasion. So are there any questions about how the prayer of sacrifice works or what needs to be done at this time in the ritual?
It has seemed to me that some of this section is a bit redundant.
Yeah.
I understand wanting to affirm it and confirm it, but sometimes it seems to be a bit much. Of course, in the Celtic tradition, 3 times is the charm, so to speak. So, you know, basically you're doing everything 3 times over to give it an extra kick.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That extra kick also can, if you've forgotten to do an offering or part of something didn't work out right, this can be your section that actually saves your ritual. So, say you had something go wrong in the beginning of the ritual when you were inviting the kindred. If you were to add and have this section in there, you can actually have your blessings still come through from the kindred by giving this one final offering to ensure that they're satisfied.
That's a good point.
Because right after the prayer of sacrifice is the omen.
Right.
Where you're finding out what your blessings are, if your offerings have been accepted, etc.
I've actually been in a situation where they had to add some more offerings after the omen and take the omen a second time.
And I'm actually going to get to that in a second.
Okay, I'm going to shut up now.
So, is there anything else with the prayer of sacrifice specifically?
No, Linda covered what I was going to say essentially, is that it feels like, yeah, it feels a little bit like a redundancy, but I understand the reasoning for it, so.
There are good reasons for redundancy, especially if you're an engineer. You know, you want to cover your bases.
I have a friend who likes to say better redundant than remiss, so, yeah.
Precisely.
And that's exactly the factor. If you had a song that didn't go right for the kindred, and you give them a awesome offering and prayer of sacrifice,
right?
Yeah.
That can save things a little bit. So, since this leads right into the omen, up until this point, all of the offerings and all the attention has been on the kindred and the deities of the occasion. It's at the omen section that they now speak. They tell us the blessings that they're imparting on us and allow for clear communication to take place. The method of the omen can be a little different depending on the ritual. Questions may be phrased however you want. However, 2 common ones are, have our offerings been accepted, which is a yes-no answer, and a yes means you can move on. The no in this case means they're not yet satisfied, and it's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's a raising of the bar to keep you on your toes. However, with this question, if after 3 tries you still get a no, skip to the thanking of the beings, don't do the hallowing of the waters, etc., and just begin to close things down. The easiest way to do the yes-no question is with the runes or the Ogham, or if you're brave enough, a coin toss. Because it gives a clear enough answer as to whether or not our offerings have been accepted. However, they don't give really a blessing in this case until you ask for a specific blessing. The other question that you can ask is, what blessings do you offer? Because this is an open-ended question, negative responses are typically seen as challenges that need to be faced versus they need more offerings.
Mm-hmm.
The blessing cup can be charged with the blessings from the open-ended question more easily, and the runes, the Ogham, and the tarot are good for this because they all have that extra meaning to them and not just a yes or no answer.
Yeah.
So, as Linda was getting at, there are occasions when you're going to have to give extra offerings, and sometimes it's to keep you on your toes. Sometimes it's because you forgot an offering in the main section, and they're saying, hey, it's still on the altar. You need to give it to me, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, are there any questions or anything with regards to the omen?
I'd like to say that I think that I know we don't have an official answer on it other than closing up, but there ought to be some sort of suggested follow-up. And I know this isn't necessarily part of the core order, but a suggested follow-up for if the 3 times happen and there's no and the offering hasn't been accepted, because I don't know, leaving it behind like that leaves a bad taste in my mouth. We've come very close to it once until we figured out what the message was. We kept drawing the rune Thurisaz, which is the hammer or the thorn and destruction, and it's usually taken as a negative response in a yes or no question. And then we realized that someone pointed out that we had called to Thor and had not offered to him properly. So we corrected that. Exactly right. Because it is associated with him too sometimes. But we were lucky in that circumstance that we didn't hit the 3rd time and then just wrap up and leave. So I wish there was some kind of clarity or suggestion for follow-up, but I understand that that's not necessarily part of the core order specifically. So. Yeah,
exactly. That's where you can actually use another core order ritual to go ask them what happened.
Right.
So that's where you could ask, do another core order ritual with those deities, do some meditation, some trance work, or some extra seeing, and see, okay, what did we do wrong? What can we fix? But that is typically the ritual leader or the priest or whoever who's going to be doing that for the group at hand, if it's a group.
We have a very new proto-grove, and we've only had 2 high day rituals, and in both cases the runes basically came up, you're on the right path, you've got the right idea, it's going to be rough as hell, but it'll be okay in the end. And I'm sitting there going, okay, for a new grove, yeah, that's in my opinion a very positive sign.
And that's where using the question, what blessings do you offer, can work with the have our offerings been accepted. So you can do 2 calls. So you can do the first one of have our offerings been accepted and see if they've been accepted first, and then ask what blessings do you offer. So that way you know that you've gotten the energy and the blessings and the communication through to the kindred, and they're now giving you their insights and their blessings on your path ahead.
Right.
So that's where both questions can be used, but don't necessarily have to be used at the same time.
I like to use both questions because that way, again, it's a redundancy matter, but, like I said, with engineers, my dad was an Eagle Scout, and one of the things he always taught me was, if you're ready for it, it won't happen. So that, my husband laughs at me because I tend to over-prepare for things, but I'd rather over-prepare than under-prepare.
Yeah, and that's where having, if you are new to things, having extra offerings and stuff like that you can give in the case of a no on the have our offerings been accepted. That's always a good thing to at least have on the sidelines, out of the way, so that you can grab at a moment's notice.
I always have granola bars and beef jerky in my kit.
So yeah, that's one of those.
That sounds funny, but it's classic.
Yeah.
You know, apple juice, beef jerky, and granola bar.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good idea. I'm going to have to keep that in mind. I hadn't thought of that. So.
Also, I keep an emergency ritual kit in my car because I am known in the local pagan community as a priestess. And I get calls to clear people's houses and do things like that. So I never know when I'm going to get called out. So I have battery-operated candles and a whole ritual kit that I just keep in my car.
And that's where knowing the core order would be really good if you're in a situation where you need to communicate with whatever's in the house.
That's one of the things that I'm working with a lot, because that is something that I'm getting used to, is the core order. But it really, if you break it down, it's very similar to other rituals that I've done. So getting used to the core order has not been hard for me.
Yeah.
Now, the next steps are calling for the blessings, also known as asking for the blessings, hallowing the blessings, and affirming the blessings. So with calling for the blessings, the Ghosty principle states you give what you can. So if you could only give them cornmeal, oats, etc., because that's what your budget allows for, that's perfectly fine. It's the more powerful spirit that gives the larger gift. So that's why the kindred are able to bestow blessings upon us. This is the section we ask for the blessings to come into the waters of life. Waters of life typically means whiskey, although in this case it's a term that's used for all drink of this nature, including water. The waters of life can be drank, sprinkled, bestowed into a token that can be taken home, and it can even be heat from a fire. This section explains to the kindred how to give their blessings to us and reminds them what they offered to us as their blessings. Some say the blessings come from the kindred. Some people say the blessings come from the deities of Some people say the blessings come from the kindreds and the deities of the occasion, and so some say just the deities of the occasion. Both interpretations for this are valid, so it just depends on your wording.
Right.
Hallowing the blessing realizes the arrival of the blessing. So to hallow means to make holy or sacred. This is when you actually call the blessings into the vessel and into the liquid that you are using for this section. This is the section where the waters actually become the waters of life. The affirmation of the blessing is the consumption of the blessing. Typically, this takes place in between the hallowing and the affirmation, or just after the affirmation, but never before the hallowing section, because otherwise you don't have the blessings in there. The integration of the blessings is when you are fully taking them in. So some people will meditate while they're drinking the waters or being sprinkled with them. Some just focus on the blessings themselves and how they're going to interact with their life. So this is also a quiet contemplative time, but can be one filled with song and brevity. So is there anything that you two want to add or ask questions about with regards to pretty much the Waters of Life section?
Actually, yes. We have a couple of people in our group who are immunosuppressed for one reason or another. In one case, the woman's son has cystic fibrosis, and literally any infection can kill him.
Yeah.
So what we've chosen to do is everybody brings a small cup to ritual, and we pour from the main vessel into everybody's individual one.
And that is a good way of handling the germ section, especially in cold and flu season.
Right.
Because that way you are not contaminating anybody. And if, say, someone has, for example, if someone has a cold sore, they're not being singled out by having their own cup.
Right.
Yeah.
Although many won't care. Many who have it will say, you know what, this is what I have to do to make sure I don't pass this on.
Right.
So I know people even in sections where, or groups where they don't have They don't typically use separate cups. If they're sick, they'll grab their cup for feast, etc., to make sure they don't pass on their germs.
Another thing, we're a family group. We have 2 families with children that attend ritual on a regular basis. So what we typically do is we have a vessel of juice and we have a vessel of either meat or whiskey and pass them around. And that way, if somebody for some reason doesn't want alcohol, they aren't being singled out. Both are available. You take what you want.
Exactly, and that's why some groups don't even use the alcohol anymore, and they actually just use plain water, because that will also make sure that anyone who, say, has an apple allergy or a mango allergy, etc., they are not forced to take the alcohol version.
Yeah, I'd also like to add that it's important to have an alternative for people who have addiction issues or who are recovering alcoholics or going through other recovery programs.
That's exactly the reason. That's the other reason why we do it, is because that way, not only for the children, although the children are a good excuse, but there are a lot of people that for one reason or another choose not to imbibe alcohol.
Right. The other thing I'd like to add is that in some rituals that I've been in and performed, we were basing them around reconstruction of the Norse blot model, and at least one version of the old school blot, the participants would be sprinkled with the blessing essentially, rather than taking it in themselves. This circumvents the problems of drinking alcohol. Also, if it's sprinkled on broken skin, it can help. Nobody is sharing the water, so there aren't shared germs between people. We take a pine branch or a branch with local leaves, essentially, and dip it in the waters, and then just sprinkle it on the participants. Cast aspersions, basically.
Yeah.
So.
And it's actually a good model for large group practices. And you'll see this a lot at festivals, because of the fact that it would take forever to pass around the waters of life.
Right.
For a ritual of 50 to 100 people.
Right. Yeah.
So many times in larger group rituals, it is sprinkled, and that's why that's a valid option. It's to just make sure that everyone gets to touch the blessings, essentially.
Right.
Yep.
So our next section is workings. These are the rites of passage, initiations, oaths, healing, weatherworking, or other magic. Anything magic goes here.
Right.
So this is set aside for more elaborate prayers, magical actions, and it's nice when the nature of the ritual works together with the magical act, although it doesn't always happen. If no one in the community or yourself have any magic that needs to be done at that time, this step can be skipped altogether. It's not a absolutely necessary step, but it is one that allows for the extra magical acts to happen. So this is where some people will take dedicant oaths. This is where some people will take other oaths to complete things. So this is where all those happen.
Right.
Are there any questions about the working section?
Nope.
No.
Did you both say no at the same time?
Apparently.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the next step is the beginning of the wind down. It's thanking all the beings. Now, as you welcomed the kindred and the deity of the occasion with a present mindfulness and ensuring that they were well welcomed, the thanking of the beings should be done in the same manner. This should not be rushed or performed absent-mindedly. Think of if you were being rushed out of someone's home, how you would feel.
Right.
So when you're thanking the beings, you should address the powers in reverse order that you welcome them. So, for example, you invite them in the order of nature spirits, ancestors, shining ones, deities of the occasion. You would then thank them in the order of deities of the occasion, shining ones, ancestors, nature spirits. So it's first in, last out.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not the section where you thank the gatekeeper or the Earth Mother. They have their own steps.
Mm-hmm.
However, you do express your gratitude and reverence for them as you explain to them that they're now free to go, though they don't have to.
Stay if you will, go if you must.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some people give a final token offering, but some do not. Either way is valid. However, some people give a final, thank you, sort of like the old birthday goodie bag,
Mm-hmm.
where you're given something at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So, do either of you have any questions about thanking the beings and how this should be done?
No.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So, our next step, and it's one of the last ones, is closing the gates. This is done to ensure that all space and time comes back together to its normal mundane capacity. This deconsecrates the space. After the gates have been closed, this is where you thank the gatekeeper as well.
Mm-hmm.
Some separate it into 2 full steps, so some will close the gates and then thank the gatekeeper. Some will keep them together smushed into 1 step. If you had them split at the beginning, so you welcomed the gatekeeper and then closed the gates, welcome the gatekeeper, then opened the gates, you should close the gates, then thank the gatekeeper to ensure that that balance is kept.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So if there was also a gesture done at opening the gates, such as opening your arms, then something should be equally done, such as clapping or closing your arms when you close the gates, to keep that symmetry. So, do either of you have questions with regards to closing the gates and thanking the gatekeeper?
No.
I had never thought of closing the gates as deconsecrating the area. The tradition I was raised in believes that consecrated space remains consecrated until willfully deconsecrated.
The only thing with the reason this can also deconsecrate the space, depending on how you say it, is because of the fact of people using public parks.
Right.
You don't want to leave consecrated space where someone else could affect the energy of said consecrated space, because then you're going to have to purify it and reconsecrate it anyway.
Right.
Good point.
Something being made sacred means it's cut off for a specific purpose or separated
Right.
for a specific purpose.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
If you're using public land, that's hard to maintain.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's where you can close everything down and make the space regular for mundane use.
Mundane. Mm-hmm.
And then allow pretty much public back into it.
Understood.
So our last step is thanking the Earth Mother. This is the step where the rite is almost over. If you welcomed a Skyfather in this section with the Earth Mother, once again, first in, last out. So if you did Earth Mother first, Earth Mother's last. Returning all that has been unused to the Earth Mother is a common practice.
Mm-hmm. We do that.
It expresses the gratitude to the Earth Mother for her support and uses up all remaining offerings. If a specific deity was named in these sections, it's good to use that in the thank you as well to ensure you keep that relationship with that specific deity. As I said, Earth Mother, Skyfather go in reverse as well. And do either of you have any questions with regards to that?
Nope.
No.
Okay. Our last step, closing the rite. Just as the rite needed a clear beginning, so too must it have a clear end. It brings all the participants back to the mundane world, takes part of the rite with them even though they are back in the mundane world, so you can, because it allows them to go back into the mundane world, but everything's been changed because of their perception and their attendance at the ritual, this is a good closing step to make sure their brains come back.
Mm-hmm.
The kindred are always with us even though the ritual has ended. And if the ritual began with a musical symbol, it's good to close with a musical symbol.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is one tradition within ADF that many groups have and happens at festivals all the time. And as one of my friends has put it, it is the sacred woo. At the end of rites, everyone goes, woo! So, for those of you who may attend a group ritual, or for those of you who may go to Fest at some time,
Be prepared.
be prepared for the sacred woo. This is the end of the ritual. So do either of you have any questions with regards to closing the rite or anything we've talked about today?
No, actually. Thank you.
We have, like I said, we have a couple of families in our group, and one of the families has a pair of 6-year-old twins and a 12-year-old. And the 6-year-old twins have decided that it is their sacred right and responsibility to ring the bell at the beginning and ring the bell at the end. And they take turns, and they know that they have to behave very well during ritual or else they don't get to ring the bell. So
that is a good way of including children.
Well, we have made a point of including the children a lot. For instance, when we give offerings and we give it to to a tree or something like that, the children are the ones that deliver the offerings. And they consider it their responsibility to take care of the offerings. And we've also started including them in other parts. We are working on our Samhain ritual, and the girls are going to be goblins that demand tribute in order for people to be admitted to the ritual. So, you know, it's including the kids and teaching them what the steps mean. We're working on a kids' version of the Dedicant Path. A couple of people and I are working together on that, and our local group has some pagan kid. There's a couple of books called it's for Earth Children, and it's got a lot of stuff that's very helpful. But if you want families and you actively want people to include their families, if the kids are involved and doing stuff, A, the family's going to be a lot more likely to stick around, and B, the kids are not going to be disruptive because they have a part to play.
Exactly, and that's where also keeping the kids moving so they don't get bored, etc., is really awesome.
Yeah.
Actually, I had a... Sorry.
Go ahead.
I had a thought regarding that, too, and it also involves something that I realized we hadn't talked about. It's not officially part of the core order, but the whole giving to the outsiders is something that I've seen at many, many rituals.
We do that.
You know, yeah, make an offering to disruptive forces or those who are not invited. And then that tied my mind to you talking about the goblins, dressing as goblins, and I wondered if it might not be inappropriate for kids to handle the outsider blessings for that reason.
They do.
Oh, okay, cool, yeah.
I've known these girls since their oldest sister was like 2 years old. So I've known this entire family for about 10 years. And yeah, they all call me Lala. That is my official title in the Grove is Lala, because
it's adorable.
Well, when the oldest girl was little, she couldn't say Linda. So I became Lala, and so now all the kids call me Lala.
Okay, so to explain the Outdweller section or the Outsider section, this typically goes in the Purification section, and it is a offering to all those forces that would not want to help our work. They're the ones that want to disrupt it, etc. So typically, some offering, such as alcohol or grain, is given to them to appease them and ask them to leave us alone for the day. This does go in the purification section, as some people also see it as a way to get rid of their unwanted thoughts and actions for the day, to make sure that they're prepared for ritual.
Again, this is drawing from the tradition I grew up in, but we usually, and this is going to sound funny, we usually do a corn muffin or a corn cake with honey and butter for the outsider offering, and I suspect that it comes partly from my grandfather's Native American upbringing, because that's who taught me to do that.
So yeah, it's one of those things that different cultures use, and it allows those spirits to not bother us for the day.
Right.
Right.
So if there isn't anything else but the core order, I will hit the stop broadcast button and end it for today.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you, Shelley.
Thanks
Alrighty.
very much.
Yep,
So-
be well.
In 2 weeks, there will be another class.
Okay.
I believe it is on the 2 powers, if I'm not mistaken, and meditation techniques.
Excellent.